Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving deep today into a truly wild book, one that kicked off an entire literary genre, Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto.
Yeah, absolutely foundational. And we've got some great stuff to work with. Excerpts from the book itself
Yeah.
and, that preface. What a piece of work that is.
Exactly. So our mission here is to really get inside this text, figure out its surprising origin, trace the completely over-the-top plot.
And try to get why it terrified people back then, and what it tells us about stories, belief,
Yeah.
why it still kind of resonates, get to the core of it.
Right, because it's a story that really came from a specific place, a specific time, and a specific person who maybe wasn't quite who you'd expect.
Definitely not.
So tell us about Horace Walpole. Who was he beyond just the author of Otranto?
Well, he wasn't like a professional writer in our sense, more a man of high society,
Yeah.
known for his wit, his letters,
Yeah.
sharp observations. But he also had this self-awareness. He wrote to a friend once saying he had more follies, fewer real good qualities than most men, wanted to act like a sensible man.
That doesn't exactly sound like the mastermind behind Gothic horror, does it?
Not really.
Huh.
But crucially, he had this deep love for his home. And his home is key here. Strawberry Hill, that Gothic villa he built near Twickenham.
Ah, the famous Strawberry Hill. His own personal Gothic fantasy built brick by brick.
Pretty much. He poured incredible effort and, well, taste into it. All the Gothic details, carvings, stained glass, vaults. But he also loved his gardens, the river. It was his sanctuary, his inspiration zone.
And he even had his own printing press there.
He did, yeah. Printed stuff for friends, his own catalogs, and importantly for us, the first edition of the Castle of Otranto, right there at Strawberry Hill.
So you've got this witty socialite collector building his dream Gothic house, running a private press. And then he writes this incredibly dramatic supernatural tale. And he was, what, 48 in 1765?
Yeah, 48. Not exactly a young man churning out his first passionate, angsty novel.
And the actual spark for it. The origin story is almost as famous as the book itself. It came from a dream, didn't it?
That's Walpole's own account, yes. Woke up one morning, dreamt he was in an ancient castle, which he admitted was pretty natural for someone obsessed with Gothic stuff like him.
Okay.
And he saw a gigantic hand in armor on a staircase banister.
A gigantic hand in armor just sitting there. What do you even do with an image like that?
Well, Walpole apparently sat right down and started writing. Said he did it without knowing in the least what I intended to say or relate. Just went with that image.
And how fast did it all come together?
He wrote the whole novel in just 2 months.
2 months for a book that launched a whole genre. That's incredible. It's like it just, I don't know, poured out of him.
It really suggests this sudden, intense burst. Maybe all that Gothic atmosphere at Strawberry Hill finally boiled over.
Now, okay, one of the most fascinating things about Otranto, and really key to understanding it, is how he first published it. He didn't just put his name on it, did he?
No, absolutely not. And this is where that preface comes in, and it's just brilliant. The first edition, presented as a translation.
It's a translation.
Yeah, by a William Marshall gentleman, supposedly from an old Italian manuscript by Onofrio Meralto, a canon at Otranto. He even claimed it was printed way back in Naples, 1529, in, like, old-fashioned black letter type.
So he completely faked its backstory. Why? Why go to all that trouble?
Great question. Maybe partly for credibility. Claiming it's some ancient lost text could make the wild stuff seem more believable to readers used to historical accounts.
Makes sense.
But maybe it also let him, distance himself a bit.
Okay.
Like, don't blame me for this crazy story. I just translated it from the superstitious Dark Ages.
And the preface itself makes all sorts of claims about this fictional ancient text.
Oh, yeah. Found in an old Catholic family's library. Story set during the Crusades, the Dark Ages.
And it uses that historical setting to kind of excuse the supernatural bits, doesn't it?
Exactly. The preface writer argues, look, people believed in this stuff back then. So an author writing about that time has to show characters believing in prodigies, even if we, the enlightened 18th century readers, know better now. It sets up this contrast.
There's even that wild theory in the preface about who the original author might have been.
The artful priest idea. Yeah, the preface speculates maybe it was some priest trying to fight the Protestant Reformation by writing a story packed with miracles to impress the common folk, keep them believing the old ways.
So inside this fake framing device, Walpole is having his fake narrator critique the very book we're reading based on a fake origin. It's layers on layers.
It really is.
Yeah.
And what's wilder is the preface writer isn't even totally sold on the book they supposedly translated. They point out flaws,
Flaws? Like what?
like how the moral sins of the fathers gets kind of muddled because it suggests praying to St. Nicholas can fix everything. The preface writer basically says the monk's agenda won out over the author's judgment.
Huh. That's amazing. Critiquing his own work through a fictional translator.
But even with the critique, the preface still insists the story's core is true.
Right. Claims it's a real castle, the story is founded on truth, citing all the specific details, the chamber here, the door there, as proof the original author knew the place.
It's just masterful misdirection. Framing this totally fantastical story as this sober historical find while analyzing it at the same time. It really pulls the reader in on multiple levels right away.
Sets the stage perfectly. Okay, so with all that context, Walpole, the dream, the fake preface, let's finally step inside the Castle of Otranto. It kicks off with Prince Manfred and a wedding that goes spectacularly wrong.
Yeah, Manfred. He's the prince, and he's obsessed with this old family prophecy. Something about the castle passing from his line whenever the real owner should be grown too large to inhabit it, whatever that means.
Mysterious.
So he's desperate to secure his dynasty. That's why he's rushing his sickly son Conrad into marrying Lady Isabella. And you see right away he's pretty harsh with his wife, Hippolyta, and their daughter Matilda.
He's clearly feeling the pressure. And then, wedding morning, disaster strikes.
Utter chaos in the courtyard. Manfred rushes out, finds Conrad dashed to pieces and almost buried under an enormous helmet, 100 times more large than any casque ever made for a human being.
Okay, just pause there. A giant helmet, out of nowhere, crushes the air. In an age-valuing reason, this is just utterly bizarre. It violates everything. It's not just scary, it's absurd.
Spot on. That mix of terror and the completely inexplicable, that's core Gothic right there, and Walpole just throws it at you, chapter 1. And Manfred's reaction? Not grief.
No, the first thing he says is take care of the Lady Isabella. Not about his dead son or his wife or daughter, just Isabella.
Tells you everything about his priorities, doesn't it? And hints at the awful stuff to come. And the helmet itself, it's not just random, it's connected.
Right, this young peasant, Theodore, points it out.
Yeah, Theodore notices the giant helmet is exactly like that on the figure of Alfonso the Good, an old statue in the local church.
Connecting the supernatural to the family's past. And Manfred's reaction to that is explosive.
Pure fury. When they check and, yep, the helmet is missing from the statue, Manfred loses it. Grabs Theodore, calls him a sorcerer, blames him for Conrad's death, orders him imprisoned under the giant helmet itself.
Wow. Talk about theatrical punishment. And the reason for Manfred's obsession with Isabella becomes clear very quickly, and it's horrifying.
Oh, yeah. He corners her, basically says Conrad wasn't worthy anyway, and reveals his plan. Divorce Hippolyta because she's unfruitful, and marry Isabella himself to get new heirs.
So the horror isn't just giant helmets falling from the sky. It's domestic patriarchal tyranny.
Deeply personal terror.
Yeah.
And it's like the castle itself reacts. As Manfred pressures Isabella, things get weirder.
The plumes on the giant helmets start waving.
Violently. And then his grandfather's portrait in the gallery. It sighs, heaves its chest.
And then it moves.
Comes right off the wall. The text says it quit its panel and descend on the floor. Manfred thinks the devils themselves are messing with him. These aren't subtle hints. They're direct supernatural pushback.
Isabella understandably bolts.
She flees through the castle's maze-like passages, heading for the church, sanctuary, and ends up in this dark, underground vault.
And runs into someone.
Theodore. He'd escaped too. Turns out the massive helmet they dropped on him actually broke through the courtyard floor into the same vault system. So he helps her.
Meanwhile, upstairs, the servants are seeing things too.
Jacques and Diego are terrified. They swear they went into the gallery and saw a giant, specifically its foot and part of its leg, as large as the helmet below. They're convinced it's Satan.
Okay, giant helmet, moving portrait, now a giant foot. Walpole was really going for it, just throwing everything at the wall.
He really was. Manfred initially dismisses them, but he's rattled. He hunts for Isabella, brushes off his poor wife Hippolyta.
And eventually catches Theodore again, convinced he's in league with Isabella.
Right, and interrogates him harshly. Theodore stands up to him, though. Says he wasn't afraid to help a lady in distress.
And Manfred's daughter, Matilda, sees Theodore then. There's some confusion there.
Yeah, Matilda sees him as noble, helping Isabella. But Isabella, based on bad info, thinks he's the villain. Dramatic irony ticking away.
And Manfred, furious, just orders Theodore's execution on the spot.
Lose his head this instant. But just as Theodore's preparing to die, burying his neck, something changes everything
His shirt slips.
and reveals the mark of a bloody arrow on his shoulder
And then Friar Jerome sees it.
and cries out, completely shocked, "It is my child, my Theodore."
Whoa, talk about a plot twist right before the axe falls. So Theodore is the friar's son.
His lawful son, Jerome confirms, from the noble Falconara family. And just as that bombshell drops, guess who shows up at the gate?
More drama.
A herald, announcing Isabella's father, Frederick, the Marquis of Vicenza, is here. He wants his daughter back, and his title. And he's brought knights and a gigantic sword.
Giant sword. To match the giant helmet. It's like the symbols of true ownership are literally too big to ignore now.
Exactly. And later, Friar Jerome spills the whole backstory to Theodore. Turns out, Alfonso the Good, Theodore's ancestor, was poisoned by Manfred's grandfather, Riccardo.
Usurper.
Right. Riccardo faked a will, seized Otranto. But he made a vow to St. Nicholas, who promised his line would hold the castle only until the true owner was too large or known.
And Theodore fits the bill.
Jerome reveals he's the son of Alfonso's daughter, Victoria, from a secret marriage. He kept it secret. So Theodore, as Jerome's son, is Alfonso's grandson, the true heir. The owner is now known, and his significance is too large to be kept out. The prophecy is clicking into place.
So everything's converging for a massive climax. Frederick finds Isabella in the church.
Father and daughter reunited.
Yeah.
And then the ultimate supernatural event.
The big one.
A giant figure, head to toe in black armor, appears. Fills the whole aisle. It's Alfonso's ghost or spirit or something. Raises its visor, booms out, "Behold in Theodore, the son of that Alfonso." Confirms everything.
And the castle reacts.
The temple walls shake. Alfonso's form then ascends to heaven, along with St. Nicholas. Divine intervention, prophecy fulfilled. Game over for Manfred.
But there's a tragedy mixed in with the triumph. Poor Matilda.
Yes, tragically, she's fatally wounded in all the chaos. The source puts Theodore with her as she's dying, Manfred asking about the wound. Just devastating irony that she dies just as the curse is lifted.
And her death finally breaks Manfred.
Completely. He's distraught. Hippolyta faints. Faced with his daughter dead and literal divine proof against him, Manfred confesses everything. Riccardo's poisoning, the usurpation.
And Jerome has the paperwork to back it up.
He produces Victoria's authentic writing, the proof of the secret marriage and the true lineage. It's all laid bare.
So the endgame.
Manfred gives up the castle. He and Hippolyta enter religious orders, retire from the world. Theodore becomes the new Prince of Otranto.
And does he live happily ever after?
Well, sort of. He's heartbroken over Matilda initially. It's only later, talking about her with Isabella, that he finds comfort and eventually marries Isabella. So, yes, a resolution, but one shadowed by the loss it took to get there.
Wow. What a ride. From a dream about a giant hand to a castle full of secrets, ghosts, moving portraits, giant body parts, falling helmets, hidden heirs, divine judgment.
It's just pure Gothic concentrate, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you can absolutely see how this completely bonkers, over-the-top story just electrified readers back then.
Absolutely. It really did launch the Gothic novel. So many tropes started here. The spooky castle, the dread, the curse, the tyrant, the damsel in distress, the supernatural, secrets bursting out. It paved the way for Frankenstein, Dracula, so much modern horror and fantasy.
It tapped into something people wanted, stories that went beyond polite society, into darker territory, history, psychology, the maybe supernatural.
So, as you think about this foundational, frankly bizarre story and its huge legacy, here's a final thought for you, circling back to that preface. Remember Walpole's trick? Pretending it was an ancient manuscript, hiding his authorship at first.
Yeah, that initial act of literary disguise.
What does it mean that this whole genre, the Gothic, so obsessed with uncovering secrets, hidden truths, dark pasts, actually began with a deliberate act of concealment by its creator? Does knowing it's an 18th century invention, not some genuine medieval relic, change how you read the terror? Does it feel less real, or maybe, in a weird way, even more interesting as a carefully constructed nightmare?